Good afternoon. Welcome to the informational meeting. The first item on the agenda is a City Council staff report by Deborah Owen, City Clerk.
No report.
Okay. Anyone here from the Mayor's office? Jean, I see you're going to talk later. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. Audit Committee, no report. Fiscal Committee, no report, and there is no Fiscal Committee meeting after this today. Land Use Committee?
No report.
Public Service Committee?
We will meet next week after the informational. Our agenda is still being determined.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. City Council open discussion. Any items for discussion by anybody? Okay, moving through. Presentations. First one is monthly financial update by Director Jean Rowanhorse, Finance Director.
Gene Rowanhorse, Director of Finance. We're reviewing the November monthly financial statements primarily because the calendar and some holidays and good things like that got caught up with us. And so we normally wouldn't be quite this far down the totem pole on doing it. There's not a lot, I don't think, to tell you. Certainly not anything that's any surprises, but a couple things I will point out. If you go on page 1 and go over to the far right-hand column where it says percentage of budget, right there we've got 78% of our revenue is in, and if you go on, and that's about halfway down the page, and if you go further down, go down to the last number at the bottom of the page, there's 12% of our, we've been 12% expended. Now, if you take, if we accrue, well, we do accrue the property taxes. They're not included on these because these are cash statements. So if you accrue for property taxes, our revenue is at 81.5%, and of course the expenses are still at 82%. So we'd be in pretty good shape. And I guess that's the bottom line message to you that we were until we had the snowstorm. And Mr. Cotter, I'm sure, will be here to talk more about it. We've been talking about it. We're trying to round up the numbers for it, but it's going to be it's going to hurt us. There's no question about it. That's probably about all I have to report on the financial statements themselves. The main general fund. I don't know if there'd be any questions on it or not at this point. We have the unknowns, the sales tax and the property tax, or not the property sales tax and snow. We were talking about that for several months now. So moving on to page 4, or page 3, which I'm sure everyone has been wondering about what the results are there. And at the end of November, we had a 4.1% negative increase in sales tax. We've done some work on trying to match up December of this year with December of last year of 08. As it turns out, if we received the last check, we've got all the checks in except that middle check from January. That's the last one. We're waiting for it. If we received a check of the same size as we got last year in January, we would end up being negative 5.4% for the year. And that will take a check of about $1.4 million. If it's less than that, that negative will be worse, and if it's more than that $1.4 million, that'll help us. And it seemed like the receipts for December were relatively low, and we're kind of hoping that we get a good-sized first check, but it's one of those things, again, we just don't have anything to go by with that's real sound as far as what's going to happen. At any rate, it's obviously not been a good year for our revenue. The other thing we've got hanging out there too, if you recall, the council put together some new legislation for some special liquor licenses. We haven't sold one of them yet. There's 3 of them out there. So I don't know if that means anything or not. And then on page 6, just to point out to you that the special assessments for construction fund, that has been closed out. You won't see that going forward. That is being closed into the sales tax, first, second penny, and the second penny will be repaid when the funds are collected from these particular bond, special assessment bonds. And then, page 16 is the outstanding and authorized debt, and this is the first time that the bonds show up for the storm drainage and the levees and that type thing. You can see there now that there's $31.5 million is authorized. They weren't issued yet. We did close that on December 7th, I think it was. And we actually got the money on December 15th, so next time around, you'll see that number with the outstanding balances. One of the things I'd like to point out to you, there was some discussion about using the restoration bonds, the RZ bonds. We had our advisor run a calculation for us of the portion that we sold as tax exempt and the rates that we got there versus what we sold with as RZ bonds. And it turns out that we saved about $2.3 million with the spread that we got, the beneficial spread we got with the RZ bonds. They sold very well, and so we got some cheap money there. And the other good news why it turns out so well is we loaded those RZ bonds on the back end of the issue. I got a chart here, but they'll really just be interest paid up to 2023 of $417,000 a year, and that's when the actual service of these bonds will then kick in. And it's about $2.4 million every year that we would be paying less in interest than we're paying if we'd just gone with straight tax-exempt bonds. So,
Gene, did you say it was 2.4 over the life of the bond or 2.4 a year?
it's $2,277,000 over the life of the bonds.
And were they 20 or 30-year bonds?
Those are 30 years. Okay? And that is about all I have to report on.
Gene, I have a question on the cutoff for December. It seems to me last year we thought that the state cut off the year 2008 a little earlier. And do we have any indication yet when they cut off the year for 2009?
No, we've not talked to the state about that at all. We just got the last check in first part of last week.
Okay.
Yeah. But until we get that final check, we're still hanging out.
Do you remember, did they cut it off early last year too?
Last year they cut it off back on like the 15th or something like that. It was early.
Okay.
But the point is that flowed over then
Right.
in the January, February timeframe, but the first one, the question is, what did they do with the first one, the first check in January now of this year, 2010? So we'll know that somewhere around the 18th of January.
Okay.
So in the meantime, we're busy calculating all the accruals. If you recall, we operate on a cash basis for the year during the year, but then we do go and accrue everything at the end of the year, so we are on an accrual basis for reporting annually. So right now we're in the process of calculating all those accruals, and we'll have to be getting those booked. That takes some time. And the other thing, if you recall, we do not do financial statements for the month of January because there's really nothing to report. So the first financial statements that you'll see that will be actual financial statements will be in February, although you will be seeing the actual numbers for the year about the third week in January. We should be able to have them done. It won't be in report format, but we'll know where we're at as far as the over and under as far as the revenue versus expenses goes.
Any questions for Director Rowenhorst? Councilor Litz?
Yeah, Gene, this may be not the question. I see Mark Cotter's here to speak about snow, but, I've been watching what's going on here lately with some concern, and I can't really remember where our budget for snow removal was at, but in the event that more money would be required for snow removal on down the road, from your point of view, Gene, where would you prefer that money came from, should we need it?
Well, there is no issue with the budget. We have plenty of money appropriated to remove the snow. What we've been working hard against is to hold the revenue versus expenses even, and so that's a zero-sum game. We're way under what we had appropriated for this because of the holdbacks and all those kinds of things we've been working on during the year. We're somewhere around $6 or $7 million down on revenue. We've been pulling all of that back. So when I talk about the concern of revenues versus expenses, there's no concern with the budget itself. That there's plenty of money there, so the council will have no action to take for any additional funds. There's not going to be additional funds. We've got lots and lots left over. The issue is we've been trying to get to the point where the revenues will equal expenses. We were doing good on that until the snowstorm hit, and then that's going to bite us pretty hard, I would say. And Mr. Cotter will be able to give you a little more detail, probably.
Well, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you, Gene.
Any other questions? Thank you, Gene. Next item on the agenda is a snow removal update by Mark Cotter. Mark Cotter and team, I should say.
All right. Good afternoon, City Council. Happy New Year. You asked for a recap of the snow event, so I'm going to start off and give you just some statistics that we got from these events from the National Weather Service. And then also before Galen's not here, I'll tell you why. And then also from an operational standpoint, we'll have some comments on that. But anyway, just to start off with some statistics, there was two fronts that came through town, one that started on Wednesday, and then we really had on Christmas Eve about a 12-hour break, and then the second front started. The combined accumulation was 21.5 inches of snow that came down. The National Weather Service tracks significant three-day events, and their track for Thursday through Saturday was 19 inches, fourth largest total accumulation of that 3-day time period on record. Sioux Falls, from their records, has not received this amount of snow since the 1960s. Sioux Falls typically receives about 41 inches of snow per year. To date, for this year, we've received about 31.5 inches of snow. The biggest month that we've ever had is in February 1962, where the city of Sioux Falls received 48 inches in 1 month. And so we're far from that, but still very significant from 31.6 inches. The last thing that we've all experienced in the last few days is the cold temperatures, and the National Weather Service really doesn't expect those temperatures to really start coming up for another week. And so with some of the most significant lows that we've seen this last weekend, hopefully over the next week we'll get into the double digits, but it's probably at least another week away, which is hard on everything in these kind of temperatures. Snow removal, as you know, as we develop budgets, snow removal is one of the key priorities of the general fund and one of the largest priorities from a funding standpoint. And it's really there to provide safe transportation for our 6-month period of the year in this climate. This effort takes much more than Public Works, takes multiple departments. Nearly every department of the city is involved to some extent, as well as a number of private contractors provide motor graders and also trucking at different peaks of these operations to make sure that we can remove the snow. One of the things that I want to make sure you're aware of, and something that we rely heavily on, street supervisors are here as well, is that having the National Weather Service in town provides us a huge benefit. We can go out there and get daily briefs. We can also call, but there's truly a good relationship that's been built with the National Weather Service, and their predictions this year have been right on. And so we're just very fortunate to have them as part of Sioux Falls and part of our team. Before you hear from a street supervisor on really kind of the mechanics of what's involved behind the scenes, I want to first just take an opportunity to really highlight some key people that, as you see kind of a seamless snow removal program get conducted every year, this being such a historic event, just want to certainly provide praise to some key people. First and foremost, Kevin Smith, the Assistant Director of Public Works. Kevin, from our role in our office, really leads the coordination of getting staff internal of Public Works, but also external from other departments. As we went into this event and seen that with people's vacation schedules and the holiday time, it's going to be difficult to fill some of our shifts, and so Kevin reached out and worked with the street department to really fill those shifts. He's also the key lead behind all the communications that you see, which is everyone gets a snow brochure, there's PSAs that get developed, website content, a lot of timely news, press release get issued, so people know throughout, during the event, and even long after, what's happening with the snow removal program. So from that, Kevin, thank you. Second person, Dean Borkhardt, he's in the front row as well. Dean is the Public Works Manager for Fleet. Fleet really keeps the street moving. They don't only make sure that they procure the equipment that we need, but they also maintain it. They also maintain the 3 fueling islands that the equipment takes fuel on. Dean told me right before we came in here, they went through about 42,000 gallons of fuel for this event, so it's going to be a very significant event from a fuel standpoint. So Fleet also works 12-hour shifts when we go into these operations, because as shift change comes, there's routine maintenance like cutting edges, but there's also breakdowns in this weather and this amount of equipment that's on the street. So Fleet actually has 12 mechanics on every 12-hour shift to make sure that we can keep things moving. So with that, Dean, thank you very much. Galen Huber should be here today. Galen's kind of dealing with another level of intensity, ripped a muscle in his arm, and when anybody tells me they have to have their muscle stapled to their bone, that's they get a free pass to not come to the city council meeting. But Galen's the one that's really in charge to make sure that the program is carried out, not only on the removal side, but also on the pickup side. And it takes a significant amount of equipment to first do the removal, but then it also takes almost equally, and not more, equipment to actually do the pickup process. Galen really wanted to do the presentation today. He knows the ins and outs. He lives it down there, as well as his street supervisors. There's 4 key supervisors, 2 of which are quickly, I think, on their way here. But I want to highlight the 2 that are here, Rich Steffen, Cam Strand, Mark Meyer, which also assisted with this event. You'll see soon Dave Memel and Rich and Lynn Harrington. Those 4 street supervisors, 2 work each 12-hour shift. And it's really quite a strategy session that these people do at transition. They get updates from their crews. They update maps of what's been covered, what hasn't been covered. They assess what equipment's broke down, what equipment's not, what contractors are with us, and where those contractors are at. And so it's quite a major undertaking at shift change to actually see the activities and the strategy that gets carried out. The forecast is normally changing, and so these people can also do and adapt to that. So my hat goes off to every one of them, so thank you very much. All right, I think we've got, we're going to have Lynn Harrington give you some background. They should be here shortly. They actually had shift change at 4 o'clock, and so they expected to be here very soon. But maybe in the interim, if you have some questions we can answer, we can get started with that.
Councilor Brown?
Not really a question, Mark, but rarely and I don't know about the other counselors, but when there's a snowfall, rarely is there a time where I don't get a phone call or a complaint or someone on the street making comment. I had none of that this time. It went so seamlessly. You guys did a remarkable job and really deserve a pat on the back, especially over a holiday, for the efforts that you put forth. So thank you.
Right. Good.
Councilor Knudsen?
And I don't have a question either, but I had a neighbor walking his dog really soon after the storm, and he just went on and on and on how impressed he was with all of your work. And so thank you very much from all the citizens of Sioux Falls for spending your holidays out on those treacherous roads when the rest of us were enjoying our families.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Jameson?
I did have a couple of calls from a couple of people on the southwest side of town who didn't get their street plowed in time, and I called I talked to Galen, must have been Christmas Day or the day after, maybe, and Galen told me about all the struggles they were having with the equipment breaking down and the contractors who didn't have chains on their equipment or the six-wheel drive graders, and but they were going to get to those roads as fast as they could and send us an update. And then about an hour or two later, I get a call back from the same people who called about their street not being plowed, thinking that I had moved mountains to get the city to plow their streets. So now, forever, I'm golden with these people. But again, yes, thank you. Very, very good job. I think you guys did a great job in almost a disaster. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Litz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greg, was that your dad that called you? I had some visitors from Colorado. They're up in the mountains there, and they have a lot of snow issues up there, too, and they were amazed. They had to stay over an extra day because they couldn't leave because the interstate was closed down, but they were able to move around inside the city of Sioux Falls, and they were amazed at how much snow, how much equipment, and what we did with it. So, I too, want to give you a kudos. I did not get one call from anybody at all, and I think everybody kind of understood, and it kind of brought this community together in some ways, because I know I did a lot of snow shoveling for folks around my neighborhood, and I saw a lot of other people doing that too, and I don't know if it was a crisis or whatever, but when we get at a big thing like this here, it kind of brings this community together in a sense. But I'm a machinery guy. I'm also into construction, and it just amazes me to think and to drive around and see all the equipment at work, because I know what happens to diesel fuel when it gets that cold. I know what happens to machinery. If there's a flaw in it, it'll come out in the cold. And I was just amazed at how much snow and how quickly everybody was able to get in and around the city of Sioux Falls. And the snow routes, I lived by the hospital, they were always open. Somebody came by hourly on that. So, the emergency routes were open. And I too was just amazed at, the way things went. And Mark, I do kind of have a question. Gene said, it's not a problem. Do you have any estimates as to what this thing has cost the city so far in terms of dollars?
We're certainly tracking those costs close, but since we really went up through the end of the year, and we are calling contractors today to actually get their invoices, not only for the motor graders, but the 45 side dumps that were used and the 3 dozers. There's just a number of costs, so we don't want to speculate at this point, but what we've communicated is that we would certainly hope to have that number by the end of the week, and then we can certainly share that with you. We want to give you a good number. There's numbers from, obviously, equipment, people, fuel, salt, chemicals, sand. There's just a number of factors, and so we would prefer to wait some time.
Mark, obviously the streets are all cleared by now, and I assume we are continuing to pick up snow, or what's the status on that?
We are, and I think some of those questions I'll probably, once the last 2 supervisors just walked in, so I'm going to give them an introduction kind of on the fly. Dave Memo and Lynn Harrington, they did just have a shift change, that's why they are running a few minutes. But one of the things that we're doing now is that for the most part, the snow has been removed. Now there's going to be selective areas that get addressed, but we had calls today on specific intersections, and a supervisor or a lead goes out and looks at it, and then they assess what it's going to take to actually remove that, whether it's an eighth loader or an actual just an end dump loader. Those kind of activities, and they'll actually happen probably for the next week and a half to 2 weeks. The focus that the street department did this starting last night, It'll be this night again, and then likely one more night is to go around the schools, public and parochial, and just make sure that the parking around the schools is good, the drop-off areas are good, and then we're also spreading some salt and sand to make sure those drop-off areas are safe. So,
So how long will we continue to pick up snow, do you think, for?
well, we're going to address these case-by-case issues until we're done.
Okay.
But we also have another snow event coming in that is likely to start, I think Cam had said, on Wednesday night at midnight, and then we're going to get about 4 inches of snow, and then it's going to blow for a couple of days. And so we're going to actually have to transition back to snow removal activities. Likely with 21.5 inches of snow coming in one event, we didn't really lose any of the previous 8 inches that we'd gotten. And so this will be a case-by-case basis probably for the foreseeable future.
And I forgot, we have 2 or 3 machines that pick up the snow that load it into the trucks?
Yeah, I'm going to probably, these guys live this every day.
And 4 blowers that would be available if they're all available at that time.
Right.
4 80s and 4 blowers. Right now, we have 180 down and 2 blowers down.
Okay.
That we're working on. So.
Councilor Brown, did you have a question?
I did, and forgive me, Mark, if you mentioned this, but I assume that also we're still widening the path on a number of streets as well, because they're pretty narrow in some areas.
We are. We were contacted today by one in particular was 57th Street, and we went back out there. That's essentially that outside lane has gotten crowded because we just don't have room to store the snow, and so the street department will continue to actually work on removing that snow. Those key thoroughfares, we've got to actually have full capacity, and so they'll get those done. And it doesn't take us very long once we mobilize out there. But it'll certainly complicate it with more snow and wind that's expected to come this week.
When we do the snow pickup, do we try to limit that, limit the amount of overtime with that, or do we just go until it's done, or how does that work?
Well, what we decided to do on this one, because we still had, we wanted to make sure that we got through our priority streets, and 41st Street being one, our key arterials, Minnesota, all the way over to Kiwanis. Some of those key, there's a spreadsheet, and it's all by priority, and we wanted to get to a certain level of that priority list before we switched to 8-hour shifts. And we're on 8-hour shifts this week. But we essentially stayed 12-hour shifts through Wednesday, that started on December 23rd, through New Year's Eve. 8 o'clock that evening is when operations shut down. And then last night at midnight is when they started back up again. But we're now on 8-hour shifts. We're going to selectively address these areas as we can. So,
Councilor Jameson?
Just real quick, Mark, that 4 inches that's coming on Wednesday or so, could we just defer that till March? Could you?
You probably have a better chance of doing that than me. So, let me actually have Lynn Harrington come up here. He's going to actually just path you through just some of the background mechanics behind the event. And then again, we're all here to answer your questions.
I guess I wasn't really prepared. I didn't know that I was going to be put on the spot up here and go through some of them, what all transpired here. I guess I'm not sure where everybody wants me to start here. At the beginning of the storm, when we found out that this storm was coming into the area, originally they were talking 12, 15 inches. So we started gearing up with fleet maintenance, getting equipment ready. We started talking to the other city departments, both Public Works and Parks and all the other city departments that assist us with our snow removal, and started giving them numbers of people that we thought we would need to man the storm for all of our shifts. As the storm started to move in, as you know, things were kind of mixed. We had snow for quite some time off and on. We concentrated on the emergency snow routes, secondary emergency routes, keeping them plowed and cleared. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the EOC was activated, and we were under direction that if any ambulance, police, fire, any emergency services needed our assistance to get into a residential neighborhood, we would be prepared to do that. Once the snowfall had somewhat significantly been slowed down, the accumulation had slowed down, joint decision was made to start plowing in the Zone 3 and the Zone 2 the next day. I believe from the time that we started doing that, we went through the entire Zone 3, Zone 2, east, west, north, south, both on the one day there, and we replowed a lot of the Zone 3 areas just because of the snow that did continue to fall and the wind that we had. And I believe we still, I think, within about 48 hours, we had, from the time we originally started plowing, we had completed. And then we started picking up snow on the major arterials and in the downtown area. So.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes. Can you say something about the interaction between the public and private graders? In other words, do the private companies, do they have a certain section of town they do, or do you integrate them in your system?
Each of the private contractors have an area that is basically designated as their area, and that's where they start and that's where they primarily work. As different areas of town get completed, we will move not only our crews, but we will move the contractor crews around to assist in other areas to try and get everything all completed.
And I assume the hourly contractors just work on an hourly rate?
Right. Yep, that's correct.
Councilor Litz?
Would you be the salt guy? Do you know about the salts? I just kind of wanted a general breakdown of what kind of salts we have, if we've changed the formula, how we procure them, if there's different liquid salt we put on as opposed to a rock mixed with gravel type thing.
Well, what we have is we have a rock salt is what we primarily use, and then we wet that rock salt with a calcium chloride liquid. What's the rates? 13 gallons per ton is what we pre-wet that salt at, and that's primarily what we use for de-icing chemicals. There was a pretty good period through this storm. There was a good couple-day period there at the peak of this storm where we stopped using that material. It was getting to a point where it was ineffective. The snow was coming too quickly, and we just quit using it. It was basically throwing money away. So. And once we got a handle on things again and the snow started to let up where we could use it again, and we started doing that again to clear the streets off. So,
is that chemical, and maybe Kevin would know this here, when it melts and goes into the river, things like that there, is that the one that would be the least harmful or corrosive to the environment? I was kind of thinking about that. We dump a lot of chemicals in there. It winds up in the river. It winds up on it. I see what it does to medians, after repeatedly being up there and the snow melts. Have you any thoughts about that, or is there anything educational that you could tell me?
Well, I believe a majority of that stuff gets diluted with the snow and the melt and everything else. A lot of it, and especially in our snow dump areas, all of our snow dump areas, we do have a vegetated buffer from where we stop stacking snow to an outlet where that would either drain into the sewer system or drain eventually into the river. And from what I understand, that vegetated buffer is enough to, and the dilution of the chemical with the water and the snowfall is enough that it's really not that harmful to the environment.
Councilor Jameson?
This is a kind of a doomsday question, but if we had another event like we just occurred over the holiday, if that happened again this week, next week, and all that snow was on the side streets, essentially, where would all that snow be pushed to? Would the roads just get narrower, or would you just continue to push?
Essentially, that's what would happen at this point. The roads would just get narrower. We really don't. Obviously, the first priority would be to get passage so that everybody has a way in and out. I guess that would be something that would have to be a joint decision made by Mark and Kevin and Galen and us four supervisors as to whether or not it was feasible for us to go out there at some point and start picking up even residential streets to allow for more storage of snow. It's happened before. It's been a long time. I remember a few times in the early 80s where we had to go out and pick up snow on all the arterial routes to allow for more storage. I can't recall many times that we have done that. We've done it in some selective areas, in the residential areas, just due to blowing snow and everything, but not, to my recollection, we've never had to do the whole town.
In my district, the Southwest District, the wind blows, there's a lot of drifts. Some of the intersections there, the wind, the row of snow is piled so high that at some of the intersections, when a car comes to pull out, say to enter onto Western Avenue, they've got to nudge way out there to see if traffic's coming. Is there any future plans just to maybe help push those intersections back a little bit or do anything to help?
We have been working on that on all 3 shifts. We've kind of been doing it on an as needed or on a complaint basis. As we get complaints about intersections with line of sight issues, we've been addressing them by either pushing them back if we're able to, or picking them up. So right now, the plan is just continue to handle those on a complaint basis, but it's certainly possible we may need to look at it a little closer after some of these other operations have wound up a little bit to see if we need to go look a little more closely at some of the main intersections anyway.
Councilor Anderson?
Lynn or Mark, whoever can answer this, how many city employees and private contractors did we have working out in this event? Maybe an estimate?
Total or per shift at one time?
Total.
Total? We probably average about pretty close to about 100 employees per shift, I guess. I think that's a fairly close guesstimate. So total for 2 12-hour shifts, about 200 people.
I just want to commend you, yourself, staff, Mark, Kevin. Just an amazing job. I was out Christmas Day morning, had to go to work, and it was just amazing what I was seeing out there with the contractors, city officials out there. Your dedication is something we can all be proud of.
A follow-up question on that. So we have 200 employees or 200 people that worked on it. What's the split between the city versus private?
We probably have per shift, I would guess that we have somewhere around 30 to 40 pieces of equipment from contractors, and then the rest of those would be city employees. So, yeah, about 30%, I suppose, of private contractors, and about 70% are our own full-time employees.
Councilor Jameson? You're good? Councilor Knudsen?
Mr. Harrington, when our equipment is down, and it's such a busy time for all of the staff working on the snow removal, do we have any backup plan for machinery from private contractors or other entities, or I just wonder, how do we handle down equipment?
Well, in the past, we've had times where we've had, like our bulldozer will go down, and that's what we use to stack the snow at our dump sites. And we do have one contractor, actually 2 contractors that will come and push snow for us. So that's a backup plan. I guess as far as any other backup plans, it's just kind of, we try and get by as best we can. I'm sure if we really had to, we can look at other options out there. The equipment dealers probably have equipment that we could rent from them if we really needed to. I'm sure there's options to look at. It's just all a matter of how soon we need it and how much it's going to cost us, whether we can afford to do so.
And then just a follow-up question. I really never thought about this before. During these times, do we have, can Southeast Technical Institute, can their auto mechanics and machinery people, can they help us at all?
I don't know. I'm sure Dean would love to have some help. He's
For a partnership, that really
What do you have, Dean? 8 mechanics per shift?
We have basically 5 mechanics, 1 lead, 1 service worker, 1 parts individual, and then we have 3 individuals that assist from other departments, strictly basically to do like our cutting edge changes, so that if there is a piece of equipment down, we can dedicate our mechanics to that piece of equipment rather than changing out the cutting edges on the pieces of equipment that come through. So our outside help per shift is basically to replace the blade or the cutting edge that goes directly and pushes that. As far as the partnership with outside, we've never looked into that. That's not something that, a concern that I have as a liability as far as an individual coming into a shop, stuff along that lines. It's something we could certainly look into. We, for the most part, can handle the load with the numbers we have. It all depends on how much breaks down at the same time.
And I think they deserve a big hand, too. It's just amazing with 70 pieces of equipment out on the street what 5 guys can do.
Can you tell us what your professional experience would be if we had used snow gates on the equipment, what that would have done during the snowfall?
The snow gates, I don't think would have helped any, not with that size of snowfall.
Since the subject snow gates was brought up, is there any other time that snow gates might be useful here in the city of Sioux Falls from your perspective?
In my opinion, no, sir. Not from what I've heard and what I've seen from other communities that use them and the conditions. Very few conditions where they seem to get damaged more and are down more than they use them. Especially with this big of a snowfall. This has been an interesting one. So,
Councilor Litz?
To that there, I've had private contractors, I've talked to them about it, and they had very little use for it and didn't think it was a great idea, and I would imagine if they could use them, they'd grab them. The thing that I was going to ask is, let's say I'm 90 years old and I've got a corner lot on an arterial street. I've managed to get out there and get my sidewalk shoveled, but right there on that corner, right there where the wheelchair ramp is and everything, it's piled high and deep, and I just can't do it. Is there some help available for me on that?
well, as a city, I don't think we can necessarily go back and clean every intersection. It's too time-consuming, too costly. What I recommend to most of the calls that I've taken on that is I recommend that if they can ask a neighbor to help, friends to help, a teenager in the neighborhood, or friends of the family, or church groups. Sometimes a men's group at a church will help or something.
Oh, yeah. I was just informed by Mr. Brown that 211, we do have a program that's run by, I believe, state prisoners that if we call that number, they'll come out and clear that away for us. So I was just trying to do a little advertising.
It's a lot of work. I do a 12, 13, 14-hour shift, and I got to go home and shovel mine too. So
I've got exactly that situation, and I always get it cleaned off. But I know there are those situations out there, and I was just trying to bring out that there is some help.
We've had to ask a lot more of the public than what we have in the past. I mean, we're just.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, regarding the sidewalks, the sidewalks that are adjacent to the streets, they get the snow from the snow plows.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I noticed a lot of those were eventually cleared. Was that done by the city, or?
Yes.
Okay.
The city does have a crew that goes out once things have kind of wound down a little bit on the major emergency snow removal operations that we've got. What do we got, Dave? How many? 26 miles of sidewalk that crew has to do. And then we also have, on several of the main arterial streets that have the curbside sidewalk that we pick up, we pull it off of there with the motor grader and pick it up with a snow loader. And there are some other areas that we have that are kind of on a miscellaneous list of things that we do once all the emergency stuff and around the schools and everything else have been picked up. And we'll go back, hopefully, if we got time, and clean those up as well.
I have a question for Director Cotter. Mark, I think we heard a number of times 48 hours is the time that residents have to clear the snow. Mm-hmm. Is there any thought are we how hard are we pushing that? Obviously, it's been over 48 hours now. We didn't go after that right away on the 49th hour, did we? I presume that there was, with the magnitude of the snow, that there was some sort of leniency provided.
Well, and that's also on a case-by-case or a complaint basis, and so it's not that we initiate. That's if that's either from a neighbor or someone that's running through that area that, over time, that does not get cleaned, then they call in, and then that complaint process starts. So it is after the last snowflake falls, that's when that 48-hour clock starts.
Well, I again would add my congratulations and thanks to all the city crews and the private contractors that worked so diligently to help us out over the holiday period. I received a number of calls and just a number of comments from people that I ran into on the street, and it was all very, very positive. And I think that was a tough situation, and it was handled very, very well.
Thank you.
The other item, at the end of last year, one of our meetings, we talked about having an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. We are going to defer that until next Monday. We'll do that. So if there's any other open discussion, or Councilor Knudsen?
One thing I meant to mention during open discussion, and I should remember the answer to this question because I've been on the Public Services Committee for a long time, is that, and I know, and I knew coming in today that I was going to have a report on my campaign finance disclosure statement, but it's what I can't remember, even though, like I said, I've served on this committee forever, seems like almost ever, but I don't remember the rationale for why we, the Public Service Committee, decided to have people who have not a chance of having a thing to report, to having the clerk's office print out 11 pages, for me to take page 8 and put 00000 12 and to sign it a couple times. And again, I was on that committee and I voted for this ordinance. So what am I missing? I mean, someone who is term limited, obviously I'm not going to have any money in an account, haven't run for office for almost 4 years, and don't plan to ever run for office again in my life. And so why are we having people like me do this? And can some of you guys help me remember the rationale for this, or is this just tradition unhampered by progress?
Councilor Sayers?
Yeah, I think that in regard to your form there, that if you haven't had any activity during the last year, Deb, I think you have a form where it's just a one-page form that you have to fill out. So,
but I haven't had any activity for 4 years,
so you should be able to fill out this one form. That's
but why? I can't remember. Why did we, as a Public Service Committee? I mean, I know you're on that committee with me now, anyway, and I don't. But I'm just saying. It's not a problem for me to do this. It's just meaningless, and I can't remember why are we having, whether it's a half a page or whether we're having people print me 11 pages. Why are we doing this for someone like me who hasn't run for office for 4 years?
So we'll know that you're not having any activity, I think, is the reason.
Right.
Full disclosure, so that people will know you did not have any activity at all.
Right.
So.
But what would I have? Seriously. But what would I have activity for? I'm not running for mayor, and
maybe somebody gave you a contribution, or maybe you put an ad in a,
if I could.
What?
Newspaper.
I just can't remember. I think
Yep.
we discussed this at the committee. I just can't remember the answer for this paperwork.
We did, and first let me just say, we just adopted an ordinance, or the council's adopted an ordinance that allows for you to put termination across that, and that can be your last report, of course, while you leave office. That aside, you had an option. You always have an option. We had 2 different forms. One where you could just say, I had raised or expensed no funds over the last year. But if you go back to 2006, with that election, there was a campaign fundraising that occurred outside of the election cycle. It was very public. And I believe if you go back to some of those discussions in committee, that you'll find that is why, that have an end-of-the-year report. So that if money is raised outside of the election cycle by an elected official, which it occurred in 06, that is why that report came to be with that council who were there at the time.
And if I might, I think I hear what Councilor Knudsen's saying, and I think it's maybe not quite exactly what you're saying. From my perspective, and I brought it up at the Public Service Committee, I'm not a member of that, but I brought up my concerns, and I don't like it either. Because for years I didn't raise any money or do anything, and yet have this obligation to fill out this form. It seems to me that if you don't do anything, you shouldn't have to fill out a form, and just because you're a elected official, you shouldn't have to fill out a form that says you didn't do anything. If you do something, you fill out the form, you submit it. if you don't do anything, you shouldn't have to do it. But that's not what the decision was made at the time.
Yeah, and I don't mean to make this a huge deal, but I'm just doing this more for the future than I am for me. I mean, obviously, no problem for me to fill out a page with 10, 12 zeros on it, but again, and I was on that committee, and I clearly voted for the wording as we have it. So I don't blame anyone but myself for this, or, and our council, but I don't blame anyone else for this. But I just sometimes I wonder if Public Service Committee should look at that again, just because, again, when I was done with my race for City Council, I filled out every report to a T and always had them on time and, was incredibly compulsive as I usually am. So, I would have indicated that I had no money left in my account, it's done. So this is really nonsense to me.
I was just going to go back, if I could, just to comment. Back, I think Bob Jameson and there was others on the council. I came on board in '06, and I was brand new when some of those headlines came out in the Argus. But there was a fundraiser that happened after the post-election report was done by an elected official, and it was a very big issue. And I think that is why we have end-of-the-year reports for elected officials, is because of that instance. And there was a response to that.
If I might, though, but I would suggest that if you do some fundraising after you file your final report, that you would need to file one at the end of the year. But if you don't do anything, you shouldn't be obligated to file anything.
Right.
Particularly when we attach penalties to it.
Yeah, and now I'm a little slow today. I think it's the winter weather, whatever. Now I'm kind of catching on to what the city clerk was talking about. But to me, that's like exception, very old news, and still is not. Going forward, I'd like the Public Service Committee to just glance at this one more time, because really this is a waste of time.
You willing to accept that responsibility? And
I don't think it's probably appropriate in the midst of an election cycle. I think that a future after the election, I think that might be the appropriate time for a group to look at it.
Yeah, obviously we wouldn't change anything during an election cycle, but certainly to have the discussion, I don't know if there's any harm in that. But you certainly have a full plate of issues, and when
that's fine.
When your plate opens up a little bit, maybe the Public Service can take a look at it.
And my last comment is, obviously I'm all for open government. That's not a problem for me at all. I'm just for meaningful open government.
Right.
Well, you could actually put a prohibition in there that once the elected official files their post-election report, there will be no fundraising period for that person until they close the account. You certainly could do it that way.
Right,
so
and
you wouldn't have to worry about it at all.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And I suppose another thought is that we could look at the current ordinance that's on the books right now and just indicate that, exception for people that are term limited or whatever. It's like me, I'm not planning to raise any money. What would I it for? It doesn't work for people who aren't running for mayor, for instance, who are term limited.
Councilor Litz?
I understand what Dee's frustrations are, and I empathize, and I also fear us every time we go near campaign finance reform, because it doesn't turn out like we want it to be. But I would say this, that I have given money to people who have won their last race but needed to retire their campaign debt. And that would, service that obligation for making that be known public. But there's a lot of things in the campaign finance thing that I think, we're always trying to prove and force organizations and stuff to show where they gave the money. And to me, the onus has always been on us who are running for the office as individuals to report that money, plain and simple. But somehow we've convoluted that and changed it around, and there seems to be in this state, in spite of the public interest in open government and knowing where the money comes from, of people having a history of getting around that, and it seems like every time we try to clamp down on it somehow, it's like a Chinese water pillow. You push down here and it comes up over here. It's just one of them things, and I'm not sure I've got any answers for it, but here we are.
Okay. Any other comments? Items for open discussion? If not, we will adjourn for then there will be an extremely brief council meeting at 7 o'clock. I think there's one item. Proclamations will take longer than the meeting.